Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar on women and relationships, that is intimate relationships. And there are few participants who have joined this, the new participants have joined this session. So let me introduce the speaker, Dr. Kamali Sampath Kumar, Behavioral Consultant, Kaveri Hospitals. She is graduated from Kasturba Medical College, Mangalore University, and she completed postgraduate studies in addictions, treatment and prevention in Canada. She has been a clinician in the field of addictions and mental health for the past 10 years in Canada and has immense experience. Currently, she is a behavioral consultant specializing in concurrent disorders at Kaveri Hospital, Chennai. She is an expert in treating post-traumatic stress disorders, anxiety and stress-related disorders, mental health and addiction issues, depression, anger management, marital problems, suicidal ideation, and other behavioral problems. She excels at delivering patient-centered care, culturally appropriate clinical services, and evidence-based treatment in a holistic way, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual components to optimum health. Welcome, Dr. Kamali. Over to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome all of you to the session on intimate relationships. Before we start, I would like to, let's just look at a quote. This is one of my favorite authors. I think all of you know who Christopher Reeve is. Christopher Reeves is actually a gentleman who acted as the Superman, and he's one of my living heroes, actually speaking, because the man not only acted as Superman, but he also lived like a Superman following an accident. So he just inspires me, and that is one of the reasons why I have the slide for you. Once you choose hope, anything's possible, is what he said. Because after his accident, he became a quadriplegic, a gentleman who acted as a Superman, who was capable of doing everything, couldn't move anything below his neck. That was his life. But then his quote says, once you choose hope, anything's possible. And why we are talking about hope? Because I'm going to talk about some heavy stuff in today's session, because it's intimate relationships we are talking about. And intimate relationships, just to clarify, because we are not going to talk about sexual relationships between a man and a woman. We are going to talk about not only that part, but also about what it is to be in relationships, especially in our place, and looking at it through the lens of our cultures. That's what we are speaking about. So intimate relationship is an umbrella under which we are going to be talking about. And what this umbrella is going to look at is actually to give us an understanding of the reality of being in this relationship, right? So the intimate relationships we are talking about is going to be about a man and a woman, which is going to be couples. So, and also the other intimate relationships in our lives, which basically is our relationship with our children, our relationship between brothers and sisters, that is also intimate relationship for us. So that is how we are going to look at it. So the whole presentation is going to unfold under the cultural umbrella of actual close relationships. So if you look at it from my point of view, how I'm going to come to you with this presentation is close relationships is what we are talking about. It is not only sexual relationships. I want to clarify this upfront because we're going to speak about children later. So there could be a question in some people's minds to think, why do you call it intimate relationship and why are we discussing children? Because I am talking about close relationships, not intimate as an intimacy or physical attraction or sexual relationships, not that. So the umbrella is quite a big umbrella. So let us start with hope that this is going to actually open our minds a little bit, give us a little bit of knowledge, and also a few skills that we can adapt and use in our daily life. So with that, let us just start with our next. Yeah. So we will look at intimate relationship as in couples. So when we look at intimate relationship as in couples, I request all of you to take a minute to look at some of these questions. And this is a self-analysis part where I really want you to think about these questions. Do you need to know and understand one another in this relationship? Now, as couples, what I mean is you could be married, you could be in a long-term relationship, you could be in a relationship that is a live-in in a relationship, or you could be engaged and you could be in a relationship, or you could be just really, really close and have decided to stay in your own individual space, but you're in an intimate relationship. This is what I'm talking about. So once we look at couples on a large scale, then I want you to ask these questions to yourself. Do you need to know and understand one another in this relationship? Are your individual values different from your spouse or partner or your live-in partner or your friend? Do I need to learn to be a spouse instead of an individual in this relationship? Do you need reassurance that you're the most important person to your spouse or partner or friend, however you want to place that word? Are there conflicts in your relationship? Which one of the partners is resistant to change? How is your communication and how does it affect my relationship is a question I want you to ask yourself. You don't have to answer any of this thing loud or discuss it. Just become aware, because as you answer these questions inside yourself, basically these questions are actually adaptations. So these are some of the analytical questions that we have to ask ourselves. Every time you're going to look at something, asking these questions and taking responsibility actually gives us a little more freedom. So I'll leave you with these questions for about 2 minutes now, and then we will take it from there, because at that point we will be able to answer these questions. Okay? So we'll take a minute to read through the questions and see what it means to us. So, welcome back. As you answer these questions, when we look at intimate relationships, do you need to understand one another? That's the first question that we have put up. So what it means to understand one another, how do you do that? When you look at it, understanding one another is not just understanding. I think most of you would have watched the brew ads, in the regional television. So if you're watching brew ads or a coffee ad or something like that, sunrise ads, these are very interesting ads for me on the TV, So when you watch it, they say, take 5 minutes to sit down and talk to each other over a cup of coffee and see what you really, really are missing out. And it's a very big eye-opener for me, So as I was watching these ads is when I started thinking about it. Yeah, you've been living with a person or you've known a person for almost 10 years or 8 years, depending on how long you've known each other. We still have this issue of understanding. The gentleman says, in one of the ads, the gentleman actually says, the wife likes the mustache, and the wife actually says, she doesn't like, the only thing she doesn't really like is the mustache. It's an interesting thing, So understanding one another is not assuming things. To really take the time to know what it means to be in a relationship is what we're talking about. So the next question, are your individual values different from your spouse? Followed by, do I need to learn to be a spouse instead of an individual? Values are different from a spouse. It's possible in a relationship to be different, to have different values. That's what attracts us in the first place. When you see a person who's different from you, that is what creates this attraction factor, that happens in relationships where you're looking for a partner or you're looking for a boyfriend, or you're actually looking at a person, even in our arranged marriage things, when they give you a chance to speak to the person who's come to meet you, the first thing you notice is something that's different about this person is what attracts you to this person. So all of a sudden, just because you got married or got into a relationship with this person, how is this person going to change? The uniqueness about this person is what interested you in the first place. So the natural factor is that we are going to be very different from each other. But the point is, we are going to be in a relationship. So how does that matter to me? We'll come to it. The next thing is to be a spouse instead of an individual in a relationship. It's a very, very unique question I asked you, because we are all professional women. So if we are all professional women, we actually have come to a point where we know we are academically excellent, we are professionally really, really good at what we do, and we are leaders in our own right. So because we are like that, guess what happens? The home part of it actually gets a little blunted in ourselves. That's the reality. Because the more the self-actualized you become, the more you will not tolerate cultural norms and the traditions of being in that role. So that is what I meant when I asked, to be a spouse. To be a spouse is to be a team player and to be a partner. But sometimes what happens in a relationship is the person takes their values too seriously to become a part of the team, and actually that can cause a lot of problems in relationships. So I want you to, this is just to give an idea about what I'm talking about. Do you need reassurance? There are lots of people who come to me and they'll be like, he never says that he loves me, or she never actually does anything that I like. This is what the issue is usually. It's not something very major. And in our culture, even going for help for these things can't happen. It doesn't happen. It must happen, which would be the ideal thing, but it doesn't happen in real life. So how do you take it? You're the most important person. Now, I want you to bring the cultural lens into this and look at it and say, why is it important for us to say this to our partners, that you're the most important person and you're very valuable for me in this relationship? Why did I use the word spouse? Because it can be husband or wife, right? Or a partner or anybody who you are having this intimate relationship and who you're couples with. That's basically why. So then comes our conflicts. Are there conflicts in your relationship? I can assure you there's not a single relationship that can go without a conflict sometime here or there. There can be little disagreements and it can lead to long-term conflicts or short-term conflicts. So do you have something like that? Which one of you is resistant for change? To change. Change is the only constant. I keep saying this to all my patients and all my clients, whoever comes, even to family members. When they come, the first thing I say is, change is the only constant, because it's always going to be there. But fortunately or unfortunately, we are very resistant to change because it's not easy for us to change. So because it is so difficult, it becomes hard for us. So sometimes what happens is one of the partners is going to resist it. So when they resist it, that can create a little bit of misunderstanding, which may lead on to become an ongoing conflict or whatever you can call it. And then we asked, how is your communication? We are very good at communicating in the office or in the business world or wherever we are placed. So when we are professionally able to communicate appropriately, how does it affect? But when it comes to our personal relationships, are we good at communication? Is a very good question to ask. So our discussion for these things is going to be through the cultural lens. Why do I say through the cultural lens? Because it's very important for us to recognize that we are a very, very ancient culture. And because we are an ancient culture, we have a lot of values and a lot of role models and a lot of expectations in our relationships. So when it becomes a husband and wife relationship, or a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or fiancés living together, or a live-in relationship, it all changes. The thing is, as long as you're my girlfriend, it's all right to do certain things. Excuse me. But once you become my wife or my spouse or a long-term partner, it becomes different. Why does it become different? Understanding that. Understanding needs to take place, and our values may be different. Being professional women, if your value is actually a lot about independence, being your own person and valuing what you do, having your own unique time, hobbies, having your own unique circle of friends or colleagues with whom you hang out with, and things like that are values. So how does that impact our relationship? Go back a few years when you were in college, or when you were in a postgrad college or postgrad course, and see what happened with your friends. Like, how long has it been since you have had a long-term friendship which has continued through years? What changed after marriage, or what changed after getting into a relationship? Because our values are put to a question. Individual. I have my own set of beliefs and values, but I'm expected to adapt myself to something else, which is a role. So that can lead to a lot of conflict and reassurance. I'm looking for reassurance in this relationship. That actually also could be conflicts. Little things, big things, family members, extended family, all those things can be conflicts. And then some habits. For example, one person might be very organized, the other person might be a disorganized person, one person might be who's a very outgoing and friendly and outspoken person, the other person in the relationship may be a very reserved, behind closed doors kind of a person, stays with himself or herself, and these could cause a little bit of conflict in relationships. And then one has to change. Change becomes difficult for us because change is actually difficult on not only you, on every person. I'm used to a certain way of doing things, I'm used to a certain way of being, and then when I'm expected to change, it becomes very difficult. So these are the things that we are talking about. As we speak about all these things, we have to understand that this is what it means to be in a relationship, because there are so many things that we have to adapt to, and that's the most important thing for us. As we think about it, think about change as something which you're really comfortable with. For example, how many of you would really be comfortable in very loose clothing? Or another thing, very simple thing. Let's say you're used to a kind of chair that you sit in every day. And one day somebody just changes the chair. And you come in and there's a new chair. What's the first question that comes to your mind? Who took my chair? Simple, isn't it? A chair that is comfortable for you has been moved, and the first question that occurs in our mind is, what happened to my chair, or who took my chair? If that simple thing, or if you have a favorite pen and unfortunately you lose it, can cause a lot of stress for people, because they have to now find something that they are going to get used to. That's change. It's simple things like that is so difficult. Imagine changing roles from a total being an individual to becoming someone else's partner. It's a hard thing for people. So understanding that this is the change and this is where I need to see what happens, and once my role changes, it's going to be very difficult. Communication. We'll come to this communication part a little later. I want you to give it some attention, because communication is not telling others what you want. It is about discussing what we want and having common goals and relationships. Having commonality is very, very important for us to move. You may ask me, Doc, you speak so much. What about yourself? Guess what? Work in progress. Honestly speaking, relationship is always work in progress. So if you keep that as a key factor, you will see that it becomes a really, really good thing that you can actually, there's always a chance for you to polish it. So that is where I want you to stand with communication. It's work in progress always. Expecting someone to understand you totally is actually unrealistic. At the same time, expecting yourself to understand someone completely is also unrealistic. How is this going to happen anyways? Through communication. And what does communication look like? How do you communicate? Your style of speech could be different. Your style of using a language could be different. Your style of saying things could be different. And then if the other person doesn't feel that it's the way that it is supposed to be said, it could cause some confusion. So understanding communication is very, very important. And then in our culture, you have to put the communication through the sieve of culture, because in our place, we have to be conscious about how we speak to our elders, how we speak to our children, how we speak to our spouses, how we speak everywhere. So there is a standard for being in a relationship. If you're a girlfriend, certain things will be okay to be said. But if you're a wife, things will change. And then that is where you need to create a balance. So as you look at this, conflicts, I want to look at real life situations. I'll give you some expectations, some examples from real life, and then let's look at why conflicts may occur. Why am I looking at conflicts in a different topic altogether? Because that's the norm. It's not if you have a fantastic relationship, congratulations, because you may have worked really, really hard at that relationship. So I really congratulate people who have no conflicts. But if you have a conflict in your relationship, we have to look at it, because that's where you may need some pointers. Roles and expectations. Of course, through the cultural lens. What is a role in a relationship? What are the roles people take on? You're a professional, you're a working woman, you're in business, you're a very busy person, but you're in a relationship. Now, 10 to 12 hours of our time goes into our profession. Out of 24 hours, we are left with 12 hours to deal with everything else, out of which 8 hours is gone for sleep. Or sometimes 6 to 7 hours is an average time that we can point for women who are working. So say 6 to 7 hours is gone. The rest of the 4 hours or 4.5 hours is all we have left for our relationships and for our families, for our health, for everything else. So basically, travel and work takes up 50% of our time, and the rest of the time, 6 hours is gone for sleep. So 6 hours, or say 4.5 to 5 hours, is actually the average that you get to deal with everything else, where you're expected to take care of your relationships, you're expected to take care of your cooking, your role, expectations, all those good stuff, all that good stuff falls under that. So this is where I'm saying cultural lens. Now, the uniqueness about our culture is women have to come back home from whatever they've been doing. You're expected to cook, clean, do things differently, pack the lunches, get the lunch stuff ready for the next day, do everything, and then you do your laundry, you're doing your children's homework, you're going shopping for all this. Look at the expectations on a woman who's a professional, who's a businesswoman. You go back home, your role changes. By snap of a finger, your role changes. Now, you're expected to be all these things. You can actually ask me a very straight question. Doc, are you expected to do these things too? Absolutely. Because we are professional women. The role of a woman in our families is quite interesting, right? So the role is of a mother, of a wife, and of a girlfriend, whatever you are. If you're in an intimate relationship, and you're probably engaged, you're in a live-in relationship, or you're married, what happens when you get home? How many of you get to sit down and relax and have a cup of tea and say, can I have dinner, please? If you have that, you're privileged. I am. Luckily for me, I do have time for that. Thank you very much, right? But then, if you don't have it, it's going to cause a lot of stress on you. Understanding this is the base. This is one of the things where conflicts can arise, because you're tired, you're exhausted, you go home and you don't have time to sit and watch TV or just put your feet forward and then read newspaper and have a cup of tea, which is the other person's role. Interestingly, if you're married, a man's role seems to be like that in our culture. Sorry, no, a disclaimer, not many men are like that. There are some very good men out there who are really helpful around the house. But unfortunately, that's not a very high percentage. So we have to be realistic about it. So this role of being a spouse actually comes with a lot of expectations. So you're expected to know where the laundry is, where your grocery is, where what you're going to be doing the next day morning. Give it some thought, guys, because that is what will make it easier on you. And it will make you understand why there is conflict, if at all there is conflict in your relationship. Finances. Welcome to the world of excellent professional women whose finances are controlled by someone else. All right? People in many relationships, what I have come across is they don't know where the money is. They earn and the money is there. That's it. Someone else handles the money, and that's a reality in many places. So finances can become strained. Let's say out of the two partners, one doesn't have a job. It can become a little more difficult for you at that point. I hope all of you are able to hear, because it's giving us a note saying that you may be disconnected from us. Kindly let us know if you're disconnected. All right? So let me continue with this. Finances could become a problem. So if one of the partners has a job or doesn't have a job or loses a job, these are realities right now in our culture, in our communities. So that can become an issue, and fights can happen over how you spend your money, because how you spend your money or where you spend your money becomes an issue for partners. So looking at that, parenting can become an issue in relationships, in intimate couples relationship. Why? Because one parent might have a value which does not match the other parent's value. One parent might say it's all right for children to drink coffee. Simple example, but the other parent might be one of the parents who says coffee is not for children, not yet. So that can lead to conflicts. If simple things like that can lead to conflicts, you can imagine who's going to be the parent who's going to take care of the school, who's going to go shopping with the children, who's going to be the parent who goes for homework help, who's going to pick up and drop the children to the tuitions. These are realities in our culture because we place so much value on education. Most of the professionals' children, what do you want your children to become? You want them to be professionals. So where are they going? They are schooling right now. If they are schooling, then all this is happening in life. This is reality for us. You know? So understanding that this can become another chunk of the conflict that happens, and taking responsibility for that. Extended families. The most unique thing about us. Living in-laws in the family. Visiting families. Family is what our whole life revolves around. And guess what? I don't like my in-law, or you don't like. Why does that person say this? Why did this person say that? This is one of the biggest challenges in our communities. So extended families can become a little challenge in our real life and be a cause for conflict between the intimate couple. And if that is one of the reasons why you have a conflict, even if the ABC, like the roles and expectations, finances, or parenting is not an issue, if it's extended family that's an issue, it's time that you sat with each other and discuss this. Because is that so important? Is what someone else who doesn't live with you 24/7, what they say so important? Should that become the base for a conflict? Should that take up so much of your emotional space in a relationship? Because once that takes, all these things can take emotional space within you. Once this takes the emotional space within you, guess what happens? As a woman, you shut down. Because when there is no emotional support, a woman feels let down and totally alone. When she feels lonely, she doesn't have any energy left for that relationship. So she will withdraw. And once you withdraw, guess what happens to the relationship? Who's the nurturer in the relationship? Women are the nurturers. So when you feel cornered, or when you feel offended, or when you feel you're in a conflict with this intimate partner of yours, guess what's going to happen to the relationship? it's going to start withering. And that's where you need to give attention to. That's why conflicts are so important. Some conflicts will lead to a wonderful, wonderful result, but some conflicts can become really large in your life. Just become aware of it. Even if you want to take a minute to think about these things and actually tell us, or when you're typing out questions for us, you can actually ask some questions. I know these are tough questions to ask, and I invite you to ask the questions. We promise not to read your name out. We promise not to compromise your confidentiality. Just send us your questions about this, because this is very important for us. The more you fester, the more you let things sit inside you, it takes more of your emotional space. The more it takes emotional space inside you, the more you become resentful. And the more you become resentful due to a little incident which led to a conflict, guess what? You're wasting valuable time in your relationship. It's really, really so important for us. So just give it a thought and let's get back. All right? So moving on, communication. One of the biggest things about communication I wanted to ask you is, what is one of the biggest challenges? The way we say things and the way people perceive it or hear it is the biggest challenge. So interestingly, how do we deal with this then? What can we do about it? One of the suggestions I gave one of my patients was, keep a logbook. Simple. Sometimes if you want certain things done, keep a logbook. It creates patience. Leave a message. Send a message. Right now in our world, instead of sending hate messages through text, send love messages to each other throughout the day. So if you don't have a time, you want something done, ask for support. I know it is all difficult. I'm not saying it is very easy. But the reality is, if we don't take the time to do it, whose relationship is at stake? Ours. Fortunately or unfortunately, relationships in our part of the world, especially for couples, is a long-term one. So it's not like short-term. It's not like we know that divorce is on the rise and all that stuff. But still, 60% of couples stay together. Instead of living together with a lot of resentment and a lot of emotional baggage, living with each other, understanding and taking time to understand and do things for each other, which creates love, could work out. So communication is the tool. So suggestion 1, keep a logbook so that you can say, if there is something that you want to talk about, can I please write it down so it's easier on you and me? Could be one of the things you could do. Using your computer, using your reminder pad, using your text messages for sending those messages. Being very, very professional even in your relationships, because it can get hurtful, right? So becoming conscious of what hurts that other person. Because once I take time to understand that, it will be a little more easier, right? So that's one of the things. I wanted to touch on a very, very touchy subject, other issues. And I have actually written cheating spouse. Why am I touching on it? Because I just didn't know this was very, very, very common. And I'm starting to realize as patients come to me that this has become quite common now. So it's very important for us to understand. Being professionals, being successful business women takes you out of the house a lot. It simply means there's a lot of time sometimes you're not around. So building your relationship is very, very important. What happens if one of the spouses cheat? How do you deal with this? What happens to the spouse who's cheated on? And what happens to the spouse who cheated? This is something I know I'm talking about something which is very touchy, but if we don't talk about this in an intimate relationship between a couple, I think we'll be missing a very, very valid point. An interesting thing happened to me in one of my sessions. I saw a patient And this young lady came to me and said, Doc, mine was a love marriage, and we've been in a relationship for 7 years. And I just seem to be a little out of focus here because I feel this attraction for another person, and I just go to meet this person. I'm doing this on, I know I'm not going to leave my husband, but I also want to have this boyfriend because all my friends in my office are doing this. 4 out of 5 people have a boyfriend, and they're all married, and I'm like, I am going there. Which world do you come from? Because inside me, of course, I can't ask my patient this, but then inside me, there's another realm that's happening. What is really happening? Because we keep saying things like our culture is the most precious of all cultures. We really have a very rich tradition, and we value relationships. We are really good people. Monogamy is what we follow, and things like that, you know. And here is a person who's actually telling me that this is really happening. Of course, it could have been over-exaggerated, I don't know. But then the reality is people are struggling like this. So that is on one hand a woman struggling with her own feelings. There was another one where a patient struggles with someone else cheating on her spouse cheating on her. So that is probably, say, 1 out of 100%, 1%, but it still is, let's say on 100 scale, it's 2 people. That's 2%. It's a very big percentage, isn't it? Because when you look at interest rates, 2% is a big interest rate for most of us. So look at those things like that. That's exactly why we are talking about cheating. So if you're going to talk about an affair, how do you take care of yourself? What do you do? There are simple things that you need to understand. It's breaking of trust that happens when this happens in a relationship. You're going to be angry. You're going to be really, really raging. Some people will become very silent and withdrawn. It can affect you in various different ways. If there is something like that, ask yourself, where can I go for help first? Because in a society like ours, it's very hard to find real-hearted people who would help you out. Find a supportive friend who really would give you a good support system. We have to have a support system. For the person who's cheated on us, what I'm talking about, take care of yourself. Focus on what is the most valuable thing for you. Do the right things for yourself. Even when you feel like reacting with a lot of anger and rage, stay in balance. Calm yourself down. Take care of your current needs first. Do what needs to be done. If you need to take a couple of days to just balance yourself, do it. Take a break. Find people who really love and value you, and then disclose this to them. Don't keep it a secret, because the more you keep it a secret, the more difficult it will get for you. So make sure you have a family member or somebody to whom you can go for support. Take care of yourself when this happens. For the spouse who cheated on, like for example, if this is a spouse who's cheating, for that person, understand your spouse is going to be very angry. There will be rage issues that come up. Your past will be pulled into the present, and there is going to be a lot of emotional stuff that happens in that house. So make sure that you support this person. If you are the person who have made a mistake, then I think it's the right thing to do is to support the other partner who's the non-cheating partner in this. You know, so understanding this dynamics, find help. And just because I am really, really privileged to be in this field, find help like couples therapy. Go for that. Ask for therapy sessions. Go for treatment. Fix your relationship if you want to. Or if you have to make the tough choice of moving on, even then, find support. Ask for help and do the needful. And if children are involved, take care of the child's needs. Children can go through a lot of stuff when all these things are happening in the household. So give it some attention and do the needful. All right? So these are the things that we are talking about. That could be one of the other issues. The one is cheating or affairs. The other one could be something with in-laws. That could be one of the issues. So under other issues, you can add anything, but how you deal with this is going to be about self-care, about being aware of what's going on, and then asking for support, asking for help and support. That is where you will be taking it. So these are some of the things that we wanted to look at. And being strong means rejoicing in who you are, complete with imperfections. That's something which caught my attention. I'm fond of white flowers. That is what caught my attention in the slide. But then I think it makes very, very big sense to see a relationship as imperfect. When we are in a close, intimate relationship, what we expect from the other person is to be perfect, is to understand us all the time, do what needs to be done, and be with us most of the time, and comfort us. This is what we are looking for. But the reality is, we are all imperfect beings. So, the imperfections is what makes us interesting too. Understanding that it means to rejoice who you are, not only rejoicing in who you are, also rejoicing in who the other person is, and celebrating the differences. Just like diversity, diversity is very important for us, right? So just like that, understanding that was said by Mary Woodhouse. And I really, really thank the internet for this picture because it makes so much sense for us today. So what are our coping strategies to deal with some of the stuff? Plan. Make a plan. Please discuss. Share your ideas. Delegate your duties. Because when you spend 12 hours out of the house, please make sure there's somebody who's taking care of what needs to be done. If you keep pulling everything and keep trying to do everything, you're going to stretch yourself out so much that it's not going to work out in the long run. So delegate some of the stuff that can be done. For example, find some alternatives, especially working mothers, working professional mothers who have children in school. Delegate things, because I know you have 1,000 things on your mind in the office or in your business, and you have 1,000 things to do at home. So delegating is very, very important. What does that delegation mean? I mean simple things. For example, you have a parent-teacher meeting. You can't attend. What are you going to do? Write a note to the teacher. Tell her your work calls you. And I understand that I have to be there, but this is when I can come in, ma'am. Can you make an alternative? Can you give me an alternative date where I can be there? Request those things. And then delegation in that. Grocery shopping. Make a list. That is also planning, discussing, and sharing. Make a list. Give it to somebody who can get it for you. It doesn't matter. They're going to go get it and give it to you. Simple things. It simply means delegation takes a lot of acceptance first. Because if something goes wrong, that's the point, right? You want to go and do it yourself because you want everything to be perfect for your family. I totally understand that sentiment. But is that practical for you as a working woman? Ask yourself this question. If you don't have anybody else to delegate, guess what? Find a vegetable seller or fruit seller who will give it to you at home. Yes, they are going to charge you 10 rupees more. Or yes, they are going to charge you 5 rupees more. But you know what? Is it not worth it to pay that? If it's going to take this out of your picture, it's going to take this one little thing which is a stress for you. You have to go from store to store to get all these things, collect it all, and then you have to wait for your travel time, and then you get home, and then you have to put it away. Instead of that, if you have somebody who comes and gives it to you, guess what? Service charge is going to be there. There are some very good stores which will not charge you service. So if you give them the list, they will bring your bill and give it to you and go home, I don't think we make use of those conveniences, Still we carry our grocery bags and still after work, because I have seen so many mothers, you won't believe it, including myself, until I found that these conveniences are available in our place, because I would see all these working women, what do we carry? We carry our lunch bags, and we carry our bags, our handbags, and our tags. Once somebody sees these three things, they know we are working women, right? We could be anywhere. So what happens is, after this, you're lugging all this on in one hand, and you're in a grocery store finding all the vegetables, and then you're carrying all this, and you're finding a transport, you're haggling with the auto driver or with the taxi driver, whoever that is, and then you're getting home, and you know what? It's 8 o'clock already. You started your day at say about 4:30 or 5 in the morning, and it's 8 already. Guys, what are you running for? Ultimately. So that is why I suggest delegate. Use the conveniences. Give the grocery list to somebody and ask them to send it home and check it out. Or ask, if you have a daughter or a son who's a little more older who can look at a shopping list, look at if it's there in the basket, find that person and delegate it to that person. Pay your son or your daughter 50 rupees or 100 rupees for doing that. That's just me, right? So do something like that. Follow up. If you've done something, follow up on it. Then please go into introspection and see what will help you. Take that time for you, because this is what is very, very important. Decision making. Who is the decision maker in the house is a very big issue. So decision making in a couple's relationship cannot be by an individual. It usually is supposed to be through consensus, which does not happen in our families. So what do? Just make sure. In the first 3 steps is where I said, plan, discuss, and share. That is where decision making happens, actually speaking. But then why did I put it as a different pointer? Because sometimes we in our own impulsive mode would have done something, and that can impact your life, or your partner has done something and you can get worried about it. So just making sure, or even sending a text, hey, you know what, this is what I'm planning to do. Is it all right with you, or do you want to talk about it? Takes the pain out of decision making, because you know what, it gives the other person the role of saying, okay, you know what, go ahead and do it, or it gives them a choice. What do we want in relationships? We want to have the power to say no or yes. That simply have a choice in relationship. Have a lot of respect and a lot of understanding, right? That's basically what we are looking for. So if we're looking for only those things, these are some of my suggestions which will work. Has it worked for me? When I follow this plan, it works for me. When I don't, it doesn't work for me. That's the reality, because we are human beings. We are not perfect all the time, but we can actually look at ourselves and say, hey, these are the things that I want to do. All right? So moving on, how many of you are ready to talk about our children? Because I know a lot of you out there are mothers. So yes, we are professionals. I have very high respect for one businesswoman who's still taking care of a child, and her child is 30. Has actually been very successful, but right now is not able to concentrate on anything other than her child, because her child is taking all her time and energy. That is what inspired me to write this topic for you guys and to bring it to you, because everything said and done, when you Google intimate relationships, you Google images, you Google this topic, guess what will show up on the internet pages? 250,000 hits about a man and a woman in relationship. That's all will come out. But guess what? Once you get married and once you have a child, doesn't matter which profession we belong to or where we are professionally placed, our children take on a major role in our lives. And interestingly, in our part of the world, the whole lifetime revolves around our children. That's why this is so important, and I took it as part of intimate relationships because of that reason. I hope you like my image. That's one of my favorite images. Thank you to the person who did it anyways. I really am very thankful to the internet right now, because these things will not happen without the internet. So here is what we are going to talk about. A little bit about child development. It's a process, all of us know it, which involves biological, psychological, and emotional changes. So And what does it mean to be a child? It is from birth to the end of adolescence is what they are children. So basically from 0 to 19 is what we are talking about, right? So 0 to 18 or 19 is what we are talking about. And 19 to 24 is early adulthood. That's how we look at it. And then from 25 onwards is an adult. So if you want to look at children, child development, we are going to develop from the day we are born to the day we are gone. But that is the journey. This is about our children. So basically what does this development involves? It involves them from being completely dependent on us to becoming independent. So what are the stages that we are looking at? Infants, toddlers, school-age children, and adolescents is what we're going to look at. Just a little bit. It's an overview of all these things so that we know what we are talking about. So 0 to 2, it's a very interesting time. Bonds are developing for this lifetime, and it helps in developing self-esteem and ability for the child. Time for parents to discover the new person, and each child is unique is what we need to remember, because that is extremely important for us. You can imagine a working professional who's had a baby, 3 months later she's in work. What could happen to this mother? How do we support her? Why am I talking about this in a relationship seminar? Because it's important. As colleagues, as superiors, as subordinates, we can support this new mother, can't we? Because understanding that she's away from a baby, just like how we looked at cycles in our health and wellness webinar. We looked at how it can affect us, right? Pregnancy can be very, very difficult for somebody, and it can be very enjoyable for somebody. But then after the baby is born, what happens to us professionals? You had to go back to work in 3 months. I had to come back to work in 3 months. I don't know about you. It was very difficult on me, because I'm talking from my point of view here, actually speaking. To leave a 3-month-old baby at home and come back to work was very difficult for me. I'm a doctor, I'm a physician, I know a lot of stuff, but this still was difficult on me. Why? Because I'm a woman and I'm a mother. So as much as intellectually advanced, academically well-read, and business-wise you're really good, it still takes an emotional toll on you. Recognizing that is very important for us. So, and then uniqueness of the child. We need to understand that each one of our children are going to be different. Understand them, respect, honor, support, and encourage that child according to what that child feels and needs. That's where we need to support these children, right? And then the next stage is toddlers. They are starting to walk. They're very active. They're trying to discover everything. They're telling, no, I'm not doing it. And very important here is, what are some of the things? Tantrums. They're going to have tantrums. I want this and I want it now. They're 2 to 5, remember? They're going to say all these things. Now, one of the unique things, of course, all this research is on the internet, right? So, one of the unique things is, what about us? Our children are going to school when they are 22 and a half. And one of the discussion between me and my daughters was like, they have a 2.5-year-old or 3-year-old child who's in the bus, in the van that they go to school. And the fun thing is, this child didn't know that he was going to the school. He stood there in the van, and then everybody was getting off the van for the school, Interestingly, this little one is a very roly-poly, nice, chubby-looking kid, I believe. He stood there not understanding that he's supposed to get off the van, and he didn't know what to say. So when they said that he has to go to school, he put his hand on his face and started silently crying. Oh my goodness, that makes so much sense in this discussion. If the child feels like that, imagine the mother who put this child on the bus and sent him to school. How are you going to be feeling when you send your child like that to school? It's not only going to be very difficult for you, I guess it would be painful too. So understanding that they are going to throw tantrums in this age, and despite you being a professional, being away for 10 to 12 hours, working yourself what is going to happen? It's going to take a lot of patience for you. So understanding this is the time they need us to help them learn how to express themselves. So it simply means, as a mother, I'm expected to be calm here. I'm expected to be the role model. So guess what happens to the mother who's been away for almost working for the whole day and is getting back to the house where she has a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old waiting for her? Tough, isn't it? You have a role that we discussed in intimate relationships as a couple, and then you have a 3-year-old. It's a very, very tough situation. So understanding these things and the responsibilities of taking care of a 2 to 5-year-old is quite an interesting thing. So now, what is my job as a parent in this situation? I have to actually teach them that no from adults is going to mean no. Emotional regulation, that means when they are having a tantrum, how to deal with it instead of giving into a tantrum is going to be very important. And also teaching them, if you say now, you're not going to get everything just now. It's going to take some time for you, and you're going to learn how to say it's all right. Teaching this to 2 to 5-year-olds when you are already stressed out and you've already come back from work is going to be very tough, right? So just stay with me with this and we will discuss this. All right? Now comes our toddlers. Continuing, they're also developing. So what is a parent's role? It's supposed to be a coach's role, providing the right encouragement, support, and guidance. Guess what? How many of us are able to do that? Parents equals to teacher. So we are the ones who are teaching them learning skills. We are the ones supposed to encourage discussion and experimentation of new concepts and skills. Guess what? That's not going to happen. They are experimenting by mixing rice and sugar together. What are you going to be doing? Okay? Are we going to have the patience to say, my child is really, really inquisitive, curiosity, he's really curious and that's why he's doing it? Or he's experimenting with your laptop and he drops it down on the floor? It's going to be tough. So real situations, real life, that's how we have to look at it and say, how am I going to do this? So learning that is what we're going to talk about. Coping skills is where we will come to. School age children, they are beyond toddlers and school. Compared to toddlers and preschoolers, these are people who need actual supervision because they are ready for independence, right? They're getting ready to get more independent. So this is where we are supposed to be teaching them self-discipline. Learning happens, good choices. We have to teach them to make the right choice. We have to teach them moral values, being truthful, being faithful, not lying, stealing is not good for you, being really, really open to friends and family, respect. All these are moral values we have to teach. Then, if they achieve something, we are supposed to be giving a lot of praise and encouragement. Excuse me. And then, another thing is, we have to give them consequences for behavior to learn from their mistakes. So there's so much we have to do for these children. How is the question. And then they grow up to be adolescents. What happens? This is where things start to become a little more fuzzy than it already is. If we had created this flow from when they were little babies to they were adolescents, we will have a choice here to say they're going to be nice, they're going to be really, really calm children and all that. But we also know a lot of hormonal changes are happening in this stage. So how do they do? What are the uniqueness about this? What is the uniqueness about this stage? They are ready to understand abstract ideas. They're trying to establish and maintain satisfying relationships. They're trying to move toward a more mature sense of themselves and their purpose. They will question old values, and they will try not to lose their identity. This is what they are trying. Because they are trying all these things, guess what happens to us? It causes a lot of stress on us. I was talking about conflicts in the other relationship, right? Guess what happens in this? Conflicts is the norm, right? Especially if you have an adolescent who's at home. They're going to question everything that you do and you're going to question everything that they do because they're not your little babies anymore. You can't pick out their clothes for them. You can't pick out what they are going to wear and how they're going to dress. You can't pick their friends for them anymore. You can't say they can go here or they can't go there because they're going to ask why. And they're not going to be very nice and respectful to you when they're asking this too. So this is where we have to understand that this is a stage in development and this is what they're doing. So this becomes the most tough times for most families. It's a challenge not only for the parents but also for the children, because they don't know what is happening to them, because middle school has never been very, they say, not fondly remembered because of the body changes, bullying and new independence. Changes in them can be, these are the changes that we have to wear. This is a common thing. Just a minute, I'll do it. Wait for me, I'll do it. But they never get things done. They become very self-conscious. What are you looking at? Or sometimes, why are you looking at me? Is the question they ask their parents. And the parent feels really offended because, am I not supposed to even look at you these days? Starts an argument just like that. And there is a lot of self-doubt in teenagers. So they always doubt themselves. So they feel as if they are not good enough. So when you look at them, they feel like, are you looking at my deficiencies or are you looking at my inadequacies, is what that question simply means. Or they're very confident. They're extremely overconfident. Oh, don't worry about that, mom. My project, I'll get it done tomorrow. And that tomorrow will never come. So when your child is in an academic field and you want them to do well, grade 12 students, I don't know how many of you out there are parents to grade 12s and grade 10s. Because if you are, then that's going to be a lot stressful because it's going to take time, right? And then there's moodiness. They're going to become very moody. And they sometimes will tell you, can you please leave? Can you please leave is a very respectful way of saying, just leave me alone, right? So there can be times when they say, get out, or there can be times when they say, leave me alone. And guess what happens to you? All of a sudden, it feels like somebody is just severing a bond. Every time a little thing like this happens, it feels as if somebody is taking a scissor and cutting you off from your child. And guess what? That's not what it is about. It is not about you. It is about how the child is feeling at that point. And this child is almost 18, and it is hard for you because they're going to say that they're trying to become independent. So that is exactly why they are doing these things. So please don't take things personally because it is not about you at this point. All right. So as we move on, one more thing, which is very, very important. Painful comparisons to themselves and their peers is one of the biggest things we want to know. Sudden and rapid physical changes, self-conscious, sensitive, and worried about own body changes. These are the two things that actually leads to behavioral changes in adolescents. Because one, they are physically feeling like this, physically they are changing. And then second thing, they are becoming like this. And then their behavior becomes very different. That is not because of anything else. It's not because your children are trying to put you down or don't respect you, don't love you. These are major questions. This is not what is happening. It's just simply because they are trying to discover themselves. 13 years, 14 years, if you see, if somebody has had a son, I don't know about you, but I have a younger brother. He came out of 8th standard as a puny little thing, not even 8th standard, out of 7th standard as a puny little thing. He used to be one of the two kids in the front, when you stand in a line. You make them stand in a line. He used to be the front guy. And he comes out of 7th standard when he goes back to school. 8th standard holidays and he goes back to school. 9th standard, the fellow was about 5 foot 10 inches. Nobody could recognize him because he was lanky and he was slim. He just shot up like that over a year. And guess what happened? He didn't know how to deal with that change, because he is used to seeing himself as a short little guy. And all of a sudden, this body has become so big, he doesn't know what's going on, Now, in retrospect, when I sit back, as I was doing this presentation, I was just marking down all these pointers, I realized how uncomfortable and very, very different he looked during those days. He would find it difficult to walk, Now I know that. But when I was with him, of course, I didn't know that. Now I see that how difficult it could be for him because he was a short person who became a very tall person within a short span of time. And that is like, I don't know where I belong anymore, So now he's at the end of the line. So things like that actually worry them, and there's a lot of stuff that is happening. There's a lot of peer pressure for our children because this is the first generation that is in front of IT. right? This is the techno generation. This is not our X generation or the Y generation right now. Right now, this is the Z generation probably, because this is the 21st century, guys. So they really think the fortunate thing is they have so much technology around, but because they are exposed to information, they take it for granted. They know a lot of things. Information is just information until it is adapted to become a habit, right? So between this time is when their behavior will be a little off. So when it is a little off, just give it a little time, be a little more understanding, do what you need to do, and take care of yourselves, right? And then the emotional symptoms. Guess what? Anger, aggression, anxiety, confusion, coordination difficulties, depression, emotional lability. What is emotional lability? You don't know when they are going to cry or when they are going to laugh. It's very difficult to gauge your teenage son, daughter, nephew, niece, brother's daughter, sister's daughter, whoever they are, because they are going to be very emotionally labile. You don't know what he is going to do or she is going to do. You know, there's generally, usually patients who bring teenagers to me, the first thing they say is, I don't know when he's going to say anything, doctor. I don't understand him anymore. This is what is happening. Fatigue, inability to concentrate. Their attention span is very less. They don't sleep. They stay on the internet for, say, till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and they sleep late. They don't get up in the mornings. You know, they sleep late. They get up late. And that becomes a big problem for people. Irritability. Little things annoy them. Lethargy. They don't have energy to do anything great. Loss of interest sometimes. Oh, forget it, mom. I'm not doing it. Or forget it, aunt. Now, my mom complained to you about me? What is this about? So it becomes, all these things become very real for them. Loss of appetite. They're eating a lot of different stuff. Because of the way they are, their body is growing, their hormones are changing. So they have pica, just like pregnant women. Sometimes they'll feel like, I want to eat a lot of chips, chocolate. How many of your children ask for chocolate and chips? Or some people will actually ask for all the sodas and carbonated drinks, you know. So they fly off into a rage just like that. Salt cravings, sweet cravings, suicidal thoughts, withdrawal from others. All these are real for the stage. So understanding this, first of all, to understand something, you should know it. So this is basically an information kind of a session. So many things are happening in their bodies. Let's just get a little more, what do you call it? Let us just tweak ourselves a little bit more and understand what they're going through. We can't expect this generation to just get up out of bed in the morning, have a bath, get ready, study for an hour in the morning, and then pack their bags, get ready to go to school, go and wait for their van 5 minutes before the van shows up or the bus shows up. You can't expect that from this generation because of the information technology. They are exposed to so much information. They're going to be, all our computers emit some rays, right? So they're going to be like this. We have to learn how to deal with these things. So again, we're coming back to the same thing. Understanding, values, individuals, reassurance, conflicts, change, and communication. This is what is going to actually make sense here too. Understanding that they're going through major changes. Supporting those changes. If you can't support, there are certain places where you just have to ignore. You know? And then one of the best suggestions that I have for you is, please do not take what they say personally, because it's not worth it at that point, okay? Don't get into arguments. Values. You have already instilled values in your children. So trust in your own abilities to instill great values in children. And believe me, it will look as if they are not listening to you at all, but they've listened to you. When they make mistakes, we can always be there to help them. Remind them to become individuals. At the same time, also understand there is a lot of peer pressure for our children. So there are certain things where we may have to give in. There are certain things where we have to draw the lines and keep boundaries. Reassure your children. Here we are reassuring the children that it's all right for you to experiment, but please make sure that you make right choices. Be supportive. When a conflict arises, look at it in a positive way and support your child. If it gets out of hand, guess what? Don't talk too much. Keep quiet. let it calm down, let the person calm down, and then you can take it up again. Change. A lot of things are changing around us, so become aware of that. Communication is a key, and one of the things that I really, really appreciate is when we are able to write a little love note to our children. It really inspires them to do things differently, so make sure you do that. Spend some time. 10 minutes a day is all that we are asking for. Do those things and see how that could help. And then, why did I call it cultural lens? Again, because of the roles that we play, we have to really, really look at it very consciously. And then, please put if some of you use authoritarian style, give it the back seat and recognize that it's not going to work in the long run. You know, having a communicative style of relationship will really be helpful, supportive, at the same time respectful. That's what we're talking about. Our meeting point, mutual respect and understanding. Understand that your child needs to relax and cope. Learn to listen without judging or giving solutions. Please do not take things personally. For example, he would not be or she would not be complaining if I was a good mother, auntie, or a good support person, or I must be bad or a bad person for this to happen. Give advice, but on a timely basis, in a respectful and appropriate way. That's one of the suggestions. So, what are the Dr. K's ABCDs for supporting a young person or even your partner? Actively listen, be kind, be gentle, supportive and understanding. Comfort. C is comfort. Provide comfort. TLC, I call it, tender loving care. Disagree less. You know, it's all right to disagree, but then disagree less, because the more you disagree, the more conflict arises. So try, if you can't agree with something, just remember one point. Everybody has a right to their own opinion, and even our children do. So we will leave it at that. Help with little things. I actually have a lot. Cherish all your happy moments. They make a fine cushion for old age, said Booth Tarkington. Honestly, guys, don't ask me who this is, because I really, really love that quote. So I have it. So, and then children and abuse. Why did I bring this up? Just like the affair, this is very, very important for us to notice. Child abuse is very common. Sometimes when we get angry or when they get out of line, I showed you all the emotional problems that can be, right? All those problems can be right across the board. So what do? We just give one thappad or one slap. So that is where I want you to look at it. It can become very severe. What happens? More obvious ever. Child abuse and domestic violence. Most important things that we need to look at. What does domestic violence create? Domestic violence is when a person gets actually hit or really abused in a relationship. So unfortunately, I have seen children who have witnessed this, and what could happen is these are some of the obvious effects. They can become aggressive, they can act like abusive parent, or increase fears, especially at bedtime or sleeping alone. They can have nightmares, they can develop separation anxiety, they can become insistently crying increases, harming, they can actually harm family pets or small animals, serious drop in school grades, they can actually drop, they may be a grade A student, but then if this is an ongoing thing, they will lose attention in school, so they will not be able to keep up their grades, they won't be able to get the marks that you expect, they do have attempts to harm themselves. Sometimes children do talk about wishing that they were dead, and thoughts of suicide cross children. Believe me when I say this, I have seen this in children who have come for treatment. So this can be very, very important. What happens in adolescents and teenagers? Some may start using alcohol or drugs, try to run away from family, running away happens. Cutting can become very common. Eating disturbances, suicidal thoughts and actions. Sometimes criminal activities can be there. Truancy is nothing but not going to school, cutting classes, avoiding school, telling in the house that they're going to school, but then they end up not going to school. So that's truancy. So some of the less obvious effects, I'm just wishing through this because I see that we have just about 10 minutes to finish up. So I'm just whizzing through this. So what are some of the lesser obvious effects of domestic violence and child abuse? They become quiet and more withdrawn. They tend not to bring home friends. They are afraid to try new things. They take on a parental role in a family. You may see when the mother gets beaten up, the older child becomes the parent who actually cooks, sometimes even takes the children, gets the younger siblings ready to send them to school. All this happens, and this is very, very important for us to notice. I'm not saying that domestic violence and child abuse is very common only in our culture. I'm not trying to say that. Please understand, this is not to offend anybody. This is not about culture. This is not about India. This is not about all those things. This is just about saying what violence does to our children. You just have to sit in front of a TV show and see how much violence happens in that TV show. And our children are exposed to that. So they get vicariously traumatized. Vicariously traumatized in the sense they get traumatized by just watching something. So that trauma is what causes all these things. When children come with a bedwetting problem to us doctors, we look for these things, you know. So bedwetting is not due to physical problems. Very rarely it will be due to a physical problem where the bladder or the nervous system or something is wrong. But otherwise, these are some of the things that we have to look for. Withdrawing from school or social activities. They don't take part in anything because they don't know who's going to support them if they take part. Especially if it's a mother who's being abused. It can become really, really tough on our children. So just make sure that this is going through you. I am bringing out everything into the open, hoping that this will open some windows for you to think about. If you have any questions that you need support with, if you want confidentiality and total privacy, I promise you that. Please send me a personal email and I will respond to it, you know, and you can actually, I can vouch for your confidentiality. Because if you have something like this to discuss, you're absolutely welcome to send me an email. All right? And then we will discuss this. Difficulty focusing in school. I'm not saying this, I'm not pulling this out of internet. I've seen patients, I've seen children who come to me, and we've been able to help a lot of children. So that is where I'm asking. And they will become a perfectionist and an overachiever. There will be someone who will become an overachiever. They will try because my mom gets satisfaction out of seeing my grades. So no matter what happens, I will bring home the best grades. And that's all that child has to give you, you know. So they go on to become overachievers, feelings of shame and guilt, always. So these are the children who are going to have self-esteem issues, self-confidence issues. They're going to have really, really big issues if we let it fester in them, just like anything else. Treatment is available. It's an option. You can actually find me. You can find me. You can talk to me. You can actually call me. You can do anything if you need help with all these things. I am passionate about these things because guess what? Our future is in our children's hand. As long as we keep them healthy and as long as we know how to support them in a healthy way, I think we would have created what we are looking to create, right? I hope most of you agree with me on this point. That's the reason I'm opening this window up for you. Not to complain, not to create stigma, not to create any of those things. Sincerely hoping that someone will ask me a question about this so I can help somebody out there, because there are lots of you who are sitting out there and there may be so many things that you're experiencing for which you don't have answers. So if you need some answers, please feel free to call me. Long-term effects. Girls actually may grow up to date and marry abusive partners. Boys may become abusers themselves. There's a lot of self-esteem. Negative experiences inhibit abilities to make positive choices. So when they are exposed to such negative experiences, it's hard for them to make positive choices. So how do we help them then? helping children with these feelings. They are extremely under stress, so support them, encourage, be patient. Don't rush their stories or ask continual questions. One of the best things that I've given my child patients is time. And I let them play in my office, basically. They just sit there. They don't talk. I don't ask questions. Sometimes it's just a quietness for, say, about 6 to 7 minutes, and then they start telling me stories. Because guess what? A child cannot sit quietly for 5 minutes. They're going to talk anyways. It just takes me patience for 5 minutes, waiting for them to tell me what's going on. Watch their behaviors. Listen to the words they have said or are going to say, and please be sensitive to their feelings. Help children express themselves in words through art or play. Give choices that are comfortable for them to do. For example, if a child is really, really tensed and really, really upset about an exam, instead of telling them, if you study well, you're going to remember it, she knows that or he knows it already. You don't have to say that. The thing that you can do as a parent or an aunt or as a friend or a mother's friend, whatever your relationship with this child is just to hold this child if she is comfortable or if he is comfortable with you hugging him. If they are not comfortable, I don't suggest you touch a child. So if they are comfortable and they are friendly children who really like hugs, just put them on your lap and rock them. It will actually comfort this child. Within 2 minutes, the child will feel comforted, the fear is gone, they'll start feeling better. If they're not comfortable with you touching them, you can just say, it's all right. Everything is going to be all right. I have confidence in you. Instead of saying, if you study well, you're going to make it, saying, I have confidence in you. You will remember everything and you will do well. Guess what? You're going to come back and tell me. And that gives them an honest choice. Talk about their feelings or let them do that. Let them talk about their feelings than acting them out. If we give them a chance to talk, they will not act it out. And then also learn to express our feelings to them, because sometimes we get scared as adults. Tell them. Even I get scared sometimes. When we say that, it actually makes them feel so comfortable. You're so big, you still get scared? This is what one child asked me. And I said, yes, sweetheart, I do get scared. But you're a doctor. Yeah, but I'm a human. So do you mean to say that when I get older, I still will feel scared? Maybe not for the thing that you're feeling scared right now. Something else you will worry about things and you may get scared. So it's all right to get scared. So that calms them down. Actually calms themselves. Grounding. What is grounding? Grounding is just to remember that it's a technique. We will talk about it when we talk about in our next session. Reassure children about feelings which are hard to handle. Example, fear is very hard to handle. And then fear of being a failure is very hard to handle. And then not giving you what you expect is very hard to handle. My mom expects me to become a doctor, but I want to be a sociologist. Very hard to handle because they don't accept it, right? So reassure it's all right and own their own feelings. That means help them understand it's all right to feel upset. If any of you are interested in going into the details of the subject, the website is right under there. It's www.mchenrycountyturningpoint.org. It's a fantastic website. Please make sure you do this. I really, really thank this website for a lot of stuff, because today we have this privilege of discussing it. And then, as always, 6 R's. Dr. Kamali's 6 R's. Recognize what is happening. Rethink what you're going to do or what you have been doing. Reconsider your course of action or course of your action. Course of your action is how are you going to do it. Course of your action is what are you going to do. What are you going to do? Reconsider what are you going to do and how are you going to do. If you have any of these questions, read about it. We are just the techno generation right now. Though we may come from different age groups, different culture, different educational background, different interests, we can read because everything is available. So you should just know the right keywords to type in, read about it, because knowledge becomes power. And then, because you know what you're doing, you are able to relax. And of course, relive your life with new enthusiasm. I'm really, really thankful for this presentation. The same thing you can transfer it into brother-sister relationship. You can actually transfer it into nephew, auntie, uncles, whatever your relationship is. Intimate relationship is nothing but the inner circle. Your family, your extended family is what intimate relationships under our cultural umbrella will fall. One of my favoriteest author, Harold Trump, says, no two people are alike. Each has an agreement with life that is unlike any other. Learn love, patience, and grace because they are the way to find harmony. Finding peace is a big part of your life. Basically, what are we running after in life? Harmony in our families. That's what we are running after. If that is what we are running after, what are some of the qualities that might give us? Love, patience, and grace would help us reach that strength. So with that, I sincerely thank you for everything, and I invite your questions. Thank you very much. There is a question which is about giving mobile to our children. It is a very individual thing. One of the suggestions is it cannot be a very advanced model. This is my suggestion because I have followed it. So I can say this to you very realistically. If it's going to be just for communication, one of the mobiles that I suggest is a lower end model which can be only used for calling you or receiving a call and texting a message instead of giving a child a very advanced phone. Depending on the age group, you can imagine what maturity level they are at. We've spoken about toddlers, we've spoken about school-going students. Usually the school age students right now need a cell phone. So if you're going to give them a mobile phone, make sure if it is under the age group, depending on where your child is placed, is a decision to make by the parents. And if that's something very important for you, it's something which you take into our plan, discuss, and decide session. Basically, that's what you want to do, because if safety is an issue and having a cell phone is important for a child, they should carry a cell phone, right? They should have a mobile phone. But the model can be a very minimal model. For example, a fifth standard child doesn't have to carry a Samsung Note, right? You may be able to afford it, but then is that essential for a fifth standard child? I don't think so. So making those kind of things, that's the choice that you may have to do. If it's safety is a concern, you want your child to carry a mobile phone, that's all right. Give them the base model of any phone, 1. 2, if you're going to give them an advanced phone, they need to know the boundaries of not going on and asking, right? That is one thing. Okay, so that's the thing. The next question is how to avoid children by watching Cartoon Network. Very good question. Excellent question. Now, what do we do when they are watching Cartoon Network? It's a particular show. I give choices always. All right. So the choice will be like, how many shows are your favorite shows? They are allowed an hour of TV, let us say. So make a choice about your show. So once you have a show, these are the shows you want to watch. Let's say you have 4 favorite shows. You can watch 2 shows only because 1 hour is the TV time. TV time is a standard TV time. So it's 1 hour of TV time or computer or games, video games, because it's not only Cartoon Network at this point. It is video games, it is computers, and it is television. So if you have 1 hour of relaxation techno time, I call it techno time because it's these three things. They can choose on Monday, Tuesday, they can come up with a schedule. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So how are you going to time this? Accordingly, let's say you watch your show. If you watch your show, you cannot go on your computer. If you go on your computer, then you cannot watch your show or you cannot play on your video game. This is something which takes a lot of discipline, and I think it takes a lot of patience and lot of implementation from the parents' side. So it takes a lot of responsibility, or it puts a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. Trust me, because it's hard. They will kick up a tantrum. They will fight us over it, but we still have to do it. Okay. The next question is how to avoid quarrel between children. They are going to quarrel because they are very different. And then what happens is, because they're going to quarrel, setting up a safe measure to quarrel is what I think about, because I don't know what the age group of the children are. If it's a teenager and a very small child, let's say a teenager and a 6-year-old, it's going to be different from how we stop that quarrel to between a 6 and an 8-year-old. 6 and an 8-year-old are almost equals. So it's a very different thing. So compared to a teenager or two teenagers fighting. So it's a very different thing. So depending on that, our things will differ. So how about we park this question and you ask me again this question and then we can take it. And there's another question from a person, and this question is, how do I tell my husband that he can take all decisions just by consulting my mother-in-law when they are not even stakeholders in the decision and it involves only both of us, like buying a car? Wow, that's quite a sensitive question. So now that is what I was talking to you about, our culture, because I come from this culture too. So we have to, anything we do. Interestingly, on Ivan, I just watched Dr. Arlene, who had given Arlene had given an interview about how our culture defines who we are, So this is a cultural thing. This is a very, very classical cultural thing. As much as this gentleman is your husband, he's been someone else's son. This is where you have to, forgive me if I sound like a very different kind of a person from what I've spoken about, but then this is the reality. So we have to look at reality. Understanding that that is a relationship and this is also a relationship. And this gentleman is actually equally responsible in this relationship. Now, you want a car, you both are earning for it, you're going to buy it. But why should he ask his mother is the question. Because he is his mother. It's as simple as that. There are certain things, just like, for example, if you want to go out and buy a really, really beautiful sari, you may just pick up a call and say to your mom, Ma, I'm planning to buy the sari, what do you think about it? Or I'm planning to buy gold, what do you think about it? You just go for a suggestion, So that is the thing. If that's not the thing and he's actually deciding about the car, the color or make of the car just by discussing it with the mother-in-law, I think you have to take it up for discussion. Say, hey, you know what? Instead of going at it with this point of view where she's not even a stakeholder here, she's not even going to pay for it, so why should we ask her? Instead of going with that attitude, if you go with the attitude that I suggest, like, hey, you know what? She's really a very valuable part of your life. And I know you respect her and love her, so you've gone for suggestion. But how about include me in this decision? Will actually get you the results you want. That's communication. All right? So I hope I have answered it. But if you have more questions, you can send me an email. Thank you. And I have another one. How to cope up with anxiety in the pre-stage. Could you please explain that? I'm not understanding what pre-stage is. Because anxiety, how to cope with anxiety itself, I can give you the answer. Anxiety is a feeling of fear or feeling of something bad going to happen. That's basically what causes anxiety. So how do you deal with it? Take a really good cold glass of water and drink it. 1. These are practical suggestions to deal with anxiety. Sit-ups could be one of the things. So that could help a person actually, So doing sit-ups can help, and also just taking a few deep breaths, relaxing for 5 minutes, then going would help. All right? So there is another question. How to make my spouse understand that we need a lot of privacy, like going out and spending time? My spouse either wants to sit at home and watch TV or sleep. I want to go out. If I suggest we go out, all that my spouse comes up with is parents' place, and this is frustrating. Totally understand it. So one of the things you could do is, actually, when you want to speak, this is something which is very unique. You're asking me some very good questions, and I think we should take this up. I will mark these questions, and you know what? In the next presentation, we will give you a couple of slides about it so that it makes sense to you. All right? That will make sense to you. Until then, if you want to speak something, always go with the open mind that this person is going to listen to me. This is one of the things I do with my patients. When I see my patient first time, I've never seen this person before, I always think my patient is going to get well. It's just that that thought itself will create a vibration which will lead to a positive outcome. This is not positive thinking. This is actually, what do you call it? This is actually the way you function. So even before talking to him, think to yourself that this person is going to listen to me and he's going to see my point of view. When you go with this energy, it's a complete positive energy and it'll open you up. Try this for the next 1 week, and when we come back next week, I'll give you some conversations between a couple so that it makes sense to you. All right? Thank you so much for being with us, and I give it. So we thank you for being here. The questions will be answered in the next session. There are some key points that we will bring out on the slide and do the presentation next week. So we invite you to be there, and take care of yourselves. Wish you all the best. Thank you very much for being here with me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks all the participants, and I must thank Dr. Kamli for giving us the excellent presentation. And the next session is on 27 June. So till then, it's goodbye from both of us. Thank you.